Welcome. Today, I am joined by Santiago Salazar. He is a senior customer success manager at SAP, focusing on enterprise accounts across Latin America. He brings a deep background in solution consulting. He's an avid rock band fan. He really looks at demos as a concert, and someone that I had a great privilege of leading when he first joined us at SAP. Santi, welcome.
Katie, thank you very much for having me. I'm pretty honored to be sharing this space with you. I'm very happy to chat.
So, Santi, before we get started, I'd love if you could just share a little bit of color around your background, some of the different roles that you've had, what kind of led you through pursuing different growth opportunities.
Absolutely. So my first role was in HR by accident, actually. I went to my first company after graduating from university, and there was no other space where they could put someone that was just joining in than HR. I wouldn't know, but at that time, I thought that it was boring. But, right now I do HR consultancy and strategic advisory in technology for the HCM space. So it tends to show you how everything in your career is going to serve a purpose and it's going to prepare you for your next move. My first role in the tech industry was in operations inside the SAP environment. And after that, I got the chance to go into the sales academy for solution engineering here at SAP. And that definitely, we're going to talk more about that later, but it definitely gave a boost to my career and what I do today. As I said before, the sales academy prepared me to be a solution engineer for SAP, which I was for 3 years, doing and sharing a lot of projects with different customers in different regions because it was a global team. And at the end, it led me to where I am today, doing customer success practice for, as you said, enterprise customers here in Latin America. But most importantly, I'm an avid rock fan. And as I said, I always say every interaction that I have with my customers is, as you said, trying to emulate a concert. I think that a concert is more than just a couple of good notes played in the different instruments. Every time that you go to a rock concert, you said, this was the best experience that I had and the best experience that I could have. And I think it's very important that we think of our customer engagements and interactions. And I've always done that, thinking, how can I make them, or how can I make this interaction for my customers the best experience that they've ever had, regardless of whether it was a customer demo in solution engineering, whether that was a QBR right now as a customer success manager. So I always say, try to, get that color, as you said, into your professional life from your personal life.
Well, even in carrying that further, if you think about a concert, there's a lot that happens before that magic moment on stage. There's a lot of coordination between different teams, not just a team that's on the stage, but all the behind the scenes work and prep. There's a lot of practice that goes into this. There's a lot of decisions that are intentionally made around what's going to craft that experience and lessons that happen. So what a great way to really think about our sales experience. Santi, you had mentioned that you were part of the SAP Academy, and I know many big companies have some sort of program around really attracting early talent and really setting the right course for your development. Can you talk a little bit about how that experience was for you and how that might have differentiated from, that first job in HR and some of the earlier career experiences that you had?
Absolutely. So the sales academy inside SAP, and as you said, different companies have variations of this concept, is a program where you have a 6 months experience, immersive learning, and 6 months practical in the field learning. One of the main principles in my life is always learn. I think that learning has three principles or three ways of doing it. The first one is a theoretical learning where you go out, you read stuff, you go listen to podcasts. We are in the in the era of information. So you go out and consume information. And that's what you do basically on those first 6 months of the SAP Academy. But the real moment where you see if you have learned is on the practical side of things. And that those 6 months where you are thrown out, put into customer meetings, where you start seeing that things could go wrong, you start interacting and getting those soft skills practice. That's where you really put your skills into practice, where you can learn from what you did. Of course, mistakes are going to happen. Of course, some moments are going to put you on the back feet. But for sure, that's where you learn the most. So I think that sales academy experience is one that has helped me not only put myself into control environments where I could put my skills into practice, but at the same time get to learn by doing on the field, experimenting with customers and doing this type of work in the real world. Let's put it that way.
Tremendous, tremendous. So, Sandy, you didn't start immediately in sales. You said you had HR, you went into operations a bit. Can you talk a little bit about your first impressions of sales? Like, what made you decide I want to pursue the sales academy and go into this path? Because I know for myself, I started on the project management and training side, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like this brick wall. The other side was a side that I kept thinking,
Mm-hmm.
what are the problems that they're creating for me? What are they selling? It's the dark side. And I accidentally discovered it. And then I never looked back because I was like, I get to work in such a different way and solve different problems, and I had a different understanding once I experienced it. What made you decide, "I wanna go down the path of exploring sales?"
So every time since I was, starting my career, I knew two things. And those two things were I wanted to work hard and I wanted to get really good at something. Those were my two first principles. But as many 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, you don't know a little bit of where you want to go. And as a kid growing up here in Colombia, my mother being a dentist, I didn't have that family background of what the corporate world was about, sales in software as a service wasn't a thing for me when I was growing up. I just knew that I wanted to work hard and that I wanted to get really good at something. And I've never heard a kid, call it 10 years old or 9 years old saying, when I grow up, I want to be a solution engineer for SAP for success factors. That's something that, you get to know after university or
Mhm.
after you've experienced this. And actually, I didn't put that idea on my head. It was my first boss who once, when we were talking about something, he told me, hey, you will be really good in sales. And I asked him, well, why is that? And he told me, you have the people skills. So that first comment really struck me up because it showed me how I could use my skills. Well, I call people skills in my interactions into actually building them to build a very successful career, and that's what I'm trying to build right now for myself. So it was very interesting to see how this person put that idea on my head, and the big myths come, as you said, the dark side. Salespeople only care about money. Of course, money is a big driver when you're doing sales, but at the same time, it's very important that right now, as the ecosystem lies, when you do sell tech, right now is more important every time that you sell something that the customer is going to use. So you're actually not only selling them just for the act of selling them, but actually you're selling them something that's going to help them, that they're going to adopt to help them achieve business outcomes. And every time it's more less about the money. Of course, money is a big important driver, but it's more about helping someone achieve a project or a specific outcome that they want to do in their business. And I think that that's something that really moves me forward every day at work.
Yeah, such a great outlook to have of what are the problems we're solving? How are we helping drive something forward? Is there anything that surprised you that maybe you had as an assumption that was proven wrong or you didn't expect to be a part of the role?
Absolutely. So one of the things that you go and when you get a comment or feedback like the one I had back in the day, it was, "Hey, I got people skills. I'm ready to do this job." Right? And the reality is that there are many things that go into doing a good job at sales or solution engineering, for example, what I did in the past or pre-sales. It's not only about nurturing your people skills, it's about also understanding and learning to actively use those skills to do the right thing. And I'm going to start with the basic things, Katie. The basic things, coming back to my music background, is doing a sound check. How can you arrive early, make sure that everything is working, and not make sure that you are attacked by the law of Murphy, right? By Murphy's law. How can you be polite and listen to what the customer is trying to tell you instead of trying to speak in front of him? And on those early days of my career, I made sure that even though I didn't have the knowledge on the product, even though I didn't have the complete knowledge of the cloud architecture and how that worked for the customer, I really made sure to do those basic things right to make sure that I did the learning with my mentors afterwards. For example, when we worked together, and I did the learning on my own hand as well. So I think that one of the things that I want to tell people out there is make sure that your skills, you know what your skills are, you have self awareness on what those skills are, and don't only rely on them because you need to actively rehearse, actively make sure that we do those basic things right to make sure that your skills are going to help you shine in your career.
It's such a great perspective here because I think so many times when I would work with someone who was new in a role, regardless of what their background was, they felt like they needed to know everything before
Yeah.
you feel confident. And I love your perspective of be great on the basics and trust that you're going to have a great team around you to help. in those areas where you don't have that depth of experience and comfort
Mhm.
yet.
And if I could allow to interrupt you there, Katie, I one of the sentences or one of the concepts that have made me go, I would say, far in situations is I don't know the answer yet, but give me 1 week and I will find it out. And I think that's sometimes when we are starting our careers, as you said, of course, SAP is a very robust, deep field of knowledge that even though people end up learn this with experience, no one has it fully mastered. I would say even people that have worked for 30 years tell me, "Hey, man, help me out on this specific topic." And one of the things that I think is important is to put yourself out there, try to put your soft skills to test. And as you said, learning is gonna come. As you said, don't block yourself because you don't know everything. As you said, that's a very important concept that I think is also very important to say here.
You know, it's perfect because so many times we think we have to have all of the answers. Sometimes the customer just needs to be heard, and
Yep.
sometimes we can answer by asking a few more questions. And
Yep.
I always say, what's the worst that happens? If you don't know the answer, we have to go have a deeper, better conversation and follow up. And another conversation can be a good thing.
I've never asked you this. Can you share with me any point in your career where you didn't know the answer to something in a customer experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I go to what could I ask as questions to better understand what their request
Mhm.
is and better understand the why of how they've asked that request. You know, so are they asking a question because it's an objection? Is it a question because it's
Oh.
curiosity?
Mhm.
What kind of type of question are they asking? What's that motivation? I went through a really great training in my career at SAP around innovation, and one of the best questions that they said to respond with is to say, "And what else?" Because some
Mhm.
the first question or thing that a customer puts out isn't actually the right problem, and we jump on attacking the first thing. We feel like we've gotta get 100% solution and go very deep, and it might actually be a couple layers down that we really get to the root of what we need to solve for.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you mentioned that you started, confident on like I can be great at the basics, but needed to develop some depth. Is there a point or maybe an experience where you felt like I've got this, I'm going to be good at this to satisfy that very foundational piece you said when you looked at what you wanted for your career, you wanted to be great at something? Do you have a moment that you've happened yet on that?
So I think that it would be very ambitious to say that, you get to a point where you know everything. I think that's very ambitious to say, to be
Mhm.
honest with you. But in solution engineering, you are the product expert from a functional perspective. And you start out to understand a couple of patterns that you see in customer interactions, and you see that those type of interactions repeat, those are questions repeated, scenarios that are repeated, so you start learning those scenarios, and after a couple of months of practice you get to be quite good at understanding what type of objections come up, what type of scenarios the customers normally want to see, and you start to master those again. And I think that again, luck equals skill plus preparation, being at the right moment at the right time. And I would say that when those more challenging projects come in, when there's a customer that you are pulled off offsite to do a 3-day demo for them, to do a proof of concept for them, you are gonna again use your soft skills, your person skills, of course, but all the preparation that you've done on those common scenarios are going to help you articulate what you're going to show to those customers on those challenging moments. And I think that, to your point, I don't think that I know everything, but I've gotten to the point that it's easier for me to, one, do the more common scenarios, and two, learn from what I already know. And that's a very important part, build upon what you already know to keep building. And as I always say, keep learning by, again, theoretically, by experience, and by mentoring. I think those are the two main points to keep on always be what they call a lifelong learner.
Well, in working with you, Santi, you always brought very much a humble approach to any of the engagements of, reflecting on what went well, what should we do different, how could we improve, what's next. Sandy, let's talk a little bit about your journey. As you stepped into sales here, what were some of the first lessons that you learned? I know you had the benefit of going through a great program that really helped to develop you through the experience of learning and then applying before you're really thrown into the customer experiences. Can you talk about some of those learning moments that really helped you become who you are today?
And I would say I'm gonna touch upon, and we've talked about, learn the basics, get on time, listen to the customers, give 100% on what's in your control. But absolutely, those moments where you're starting to grow and growth feels uncomfortable, right? I think that that's a basic principle of life as well.
It's supposed
And
to.
and when and it has to. You're completely right. And it doesn't feel right. You start to feel something called imposter syndrome as well, right? You start feeling, hey, I worked in a global team with people from Canada, from Africa, and I actually helped solution consultants across the globe, Europe, North America, you name it. And they start giving you these projects with very experienced people. You are the youngest of the room, and imposter syndrome for sure kicks in, right? How can I, a kid from Colombia who 2 years ago at that point in my career didn't know anything about SAP, is actually helping these guys deliver their demos who've done this for 15 years, right? Why me? How me? How am I gonna do it? And of course, you say, I don't know the answer yet. Give me 1 week to figure out. But once you hang up that call, you're terrified because you don't know how you're going to find the answer to that very complex question that they've given you. So I think that those moments are the ones that really push you to your limits. Those are the moments that you stop, you get your hands off the steering wheel, you sit down and you start feeling that imposter syndrome is just something that your mind creates to protect you from an animal perspective. Imposter syndrome is something that is done to keep you inside your limits, right? To keep you in your comfort zone. But once you figure out and you say, I agree and I acknowledge that I have these feelings, I don't judge them, and I move forward them. I'm gonna say I'm gonna rock and roll. I'm gonna try to find this information and just put your hand in the steering wheel again. Those are the big moments that really help you get the most out of you. And as you said before, I got the chance to go through a formal training with SAP. That was a very important part of my career. And I think that it's very good to have those controlled moments where you can fail and fail in a controlled environment, of course. And those are the moments that are going to give you the confidence to step up to those moments that are going to help you grow in your career and make the most out of it in the end, right? For you and for the customer, that's the most important part of the way, I would say.
Mhm. One of the things I always noticed you doing is, reaching out and asking questions. And I know sometimes, especially when you're new, earlier in your career, or just new at an organization, it can feel uncomfortable to say, I don't know, and ask. But I had someone great earlier in my career who said, ask. People love to share about what they're great at. People love to share about their success and how they grew. Oftentimes they almost feel a great need to give back for the people who helped them. I always say, why not ask? The worst that happens is someone says no, or why don't you talk to this person instead? And you still find a great way to learn.
In regards to that, Katie, and when we worked together, it was very important that you helped me figure out this. And you said in SAP, people like to share knowledge. And I was a bit, again, you feel shy, you don't feel confident that, you're going to sound stupid asking questions. There's no stupid question, one. And two, let me give you a trick. And it's if you come prepared to the question that you're going to ask someone, and that someone sees that you have put a bit of preparation and you've done some research yourself, not only is he going to be more willing to help you, but at the same time, he's going to also give more of his knowledge because he saw that your interest actually in responding and getting the response to that question and getting your knowledge also, yeah, growth of knowledge on that side. So I think that's very important, asking questions. But one thing that I would also like to say is, when you get all the answers, specifically in topics that are not knowledge, hard knowledge, for example, software or everything, when you're talking about career paths, right? And you start asking questions about, what's the best way to grow your career to different mentors and coaches. I believe that's something that I started doing in my career, was trying to ask everyone what was the best way forward because I didn't know it myself. As I said before, my mother was a dentist and she was just cheering me up. But when I asked her, hey, how can I grow at SAP? She was like, I don't know. So you start trying to get those mentors inside the company, people that are already on the position that you want to be. And once you collect all the information that they've given you, all the lessons that they've given you, again, something driven from rock music is find your own voice, right? Get all of those different perspectives because everyone has its different career, but try to have your own voice. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What are your interests? And how can you use those lessons that those mentors gave you to actually build your own career, build your own voice, and create your own impacts on this world, right? Because that's what we're here for, to create an impact on this world, whether that's professionally or personally. And I think that, rock people do this really good. Just build their voice, of course, build on a foundation of influences, but in the end, have your own authenticity when building your career, I'd say.
I think that segues very well into my next question of, how do you stand out when, your early career, you're building yourself. I know for myself, I feel like I almost had to work twice as hard to prove myself of Katie can get it done so fast, or, she's available even when everybody else says no. How did you tackle, as you found your voice, sharing that voice and standing out and becoming known for who you are now?
Well, one of those mentors actually said to me once, try to figure out what no one is covering, what those solution engineers that, have been doing this work for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, of course, there's something that they don't want to do, that there's this topic that no one wants to cover, right? Become an expert in that topic so that when people reach out because of increase of that topic, you can be the go-to person for that topic and become an expert in that topic, so you can become the go-to person on that end. Without going into too much depth into the product strategy of SAP, I tried to become that innovation expert that was always talking to the product team, was always bringing these solution engineers valuable messages about what was coming into our product, what makes sense of what we could position here in Latin America as well. And I started being that go-to person to for people when they have questions about these topics. I try to become that go-to person. So I would say, rather than try to work harder, I would say try to work smarter, right? And try to make sure
Your
that
own
you are
approach.
work correct. And I think that you, as you said, I'm not telling that I was not myself the one that was available at Saturdays, 6 p.m. to try to prove myself, prove my value inside the team. But I made sure that I started to know in which directions I wanted to go, in which directions I wanted to make sure that I was adding value to the company. And I was also covering those what spaces that my colleagues weren't doing. And that was the way that I actually stood out in that moment of my career and helped me grow afterwards and get considered for the other normal, let's put it that way, normal projects that people were also asking about, right?
Mhm. Well, Santi, you were absolutely correct. You picked an area to be known for and really to be a partner for. You very much created a brand, and I think there's some intentionality behind that of wanting to be helpful and be an evangelist and be a partner. And I think that really stood out in how people got to know you and that intentionality around who you wanted to be at work. And I know for myself, the lesson that it took me too long to learn was you can work hard, but then there's the brand element, and then there's the building the network and the intentionality of partnership of I'm not doing this by myself, but I'm doing this in partnership. And that growth allows other people to be sharing your success and amplifying broader and louder the impact of what you're doing.
And if I may, Katie, on that end, you're saying it completely right. It's a partnership, working on these corporations. And even if you're an entrepreneur, it's always about creating partnerships, creating synergies. And again, I can't stress this enough. Do the basics right, and the rest will come. Of course, I had to put myself on those innovation, weird topics to help, the solution engineers and the account executive at that time. But I made sure to be reliable. I made sure to be responsive. I made sure that I was able to deliver on time every time I was asked to. And that's part of your brand. That is what people are saying. This yearly talent, this person starting in his career, not only is a smart kid, let's put it that way, but at the same time, he's also reliable and he's also able to deliver when called to, right?
Well, something I always tell people early in their career is to write out what you want your brand to be. And, I say, think of it like three sentences. Someone walks in an elevator and they say, "Hey, have you met Santi?" What are the three things that they say to introduce you? That is who you want to be, and then get feedback on that and see, am I living that? Do people agree with that? Do they have other ideas? Am I being too modest? Am I being too bold? To kind of fine tune that. And then it's okay that it's going to evolve as your career evolves.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that you're saying is be coherent. I would put it that way. Walk the talk. And as you said, there are many times in which you think you're giving X impression, not good, not bad, just an impression about something, and which you actually get feedback. And as you said, be comfortable with asking questions. But not only that, be comfortable in asking for feedback, right? I think that people also are afraid or are shy to ask for feedback when something goes right or goes wrong. Actually, in both ways, you need to get the feedback of what went well or what could get improved on those situations. And many times you lose knowledge gems on feedback that people could give you. Of course, don't ask feedback for every time you send an email, but make sure to, on those critical moments, be able to ask for feedback and to the right people as well.
So, when we think about your growth journey, you've moved through different roles, operations into sales engineering, and now customer success. Can you talk a little bit about how you learn what you took from each of those roles and what you learned and how that developed you into the next role and helped with that progression?
I would say I know I'm very clear about what every role gave me. And I think that one of the lessons that I take from this is every time that you're building something, it's going to take time. I believe that, you need to put the effort step by step to do things. And I started in the position of a young professional in operations at SAP. And that just taught me the dimension, the scale, and the impact of this company. And as I said before, from a kid coming from Colombia, you can't actually dimension how this company operates and how this big company really gives you. So I came home and I just told my mom, hey, I just spoke to someone in India that's working on the same project as me. That's crazy. And we just amuse ourselves with that. That was operations, great role, great mentors, but also great friends that I actually got the chance to meet on those roles. Solution engineering, that gave me the hard skills. I think that the solution engineers, as I said before, are the product experts, and it really makes you read the book. It actually makes you get the strong and the hard skills. It actually helps you put yourself to the side and shadow someone that's doing a demo on, let's put it this way, the more complex things is payroll. So you get, to the side of those payroll experts to try to learn that. So I would say solution engineering gave me that confidence that I was able to talk about product on a harder perspective. And right now I'm in customer success. So it's not only about talking product, right? It's about engaging with your customers in a journey, in their journey, actually, is how you can become from an expert to the strategic advisor, to listen to them, to understand and meet them where they are, not where you want them to be, not where you think they should be, where they are right now, and help them achieve their outcomes right now. So I think it's a very beautiful journey, coming from a very junior role, from an entry level role at SCP, going through a formal training program, going to the solution engineering side of the house. I do believe, and I think that, when I give advice to people, I always tell them, try to learn the product, try to know what you're talking about. There are some people that say that you could go into these roles without knowing the product. I think that it's important to talk. And if you want to be advisor to the customer, you need to learn about a couple of things that are here. And right now, again, I'm putting my soft skills to test even further with empathy, with creativity, with problem solving abilities. But I think, in the end, titles don't create impact. Understanding the context and the impact that you do really does make that impact push forward.
And I think when I look at that journey, there's an empathy that's generated by understanding the different roles of the people that you're partnering with across the sales experience. Now when you're calling on a solution engineer what you're asking and how better to partner and work with that person because you've sat in that role, you've understood that role, and vice versa.
And to your point, there's nothing worse for a solution engineer or solution advisor than going to a demo without context. And I've seen many people talk about this, not only success factors, I've seen, ERP people, CX people, technology people talk about this. So as you said, you start learning the landscape of how the business operates. You start learning how each different role plays a very crucial role in that customer journey when you are actually interacting with the customer. So I try to make those roles, their job, as easier as possible. So when I need to request a demo for my customers, I make sure that I take the time to give the solution advisor the time they need, the discovery they need, and all the context that they need. So when we show up to the customer, we at least have the variables that we have in our controlled. Let's put it that way. In the demo, anything could happen. The customers sometimes, you can't predict what's gonna happen. But in the end, you can control how you come up and you show up to the customer with the things that you have in your control.
Absolutely. Focus on what you can control. So as you look across your journey, are there different points that really you hit an acceleration point and things took off, or points where you knew it was time to take on what's next? Can you talk a little bit about kind of when that change happened and what factored into that?
So I would say one of the things that I enjoyed the most from the global role was the exposure. And coming back, if you allow me to tell a story, there was this one project. Again, same sentence as ever. I don't know the answer yet, but let me figure that out. And it was, we got a request from the MIA team, from the Middle East team, to create this virtual reality experience for a demo in Leap, in the biggest tech event of Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. And I said to my boss, hey, can I take this? And he was like, sure. I mean, you can work with them. That's going to take, different time zones. It's going to take a bit more of your time. Going to wake up early. And I said, I want to see if I can figure this out, And we started working with the team on the project, started, meeting with them every Monday to just give them updates of the project. I received their content, was trying to make sure, that the demo experience with these new tools that we had with virtual experience was working fine, was customer friendly, was user friendly, and actually gave this wow experience that we were looking for to have at this very, very innovative showcase in a on-site in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And as the months progressed, I started learning, of course, again, doing many times not knowing the answer, but actually figuring that with a couple of mentors that helped me out on this project. And as time came close, I started figuring out that the team wanted me to be on site in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia to help them deliver this. Imposter syndrome kicks in. How do they want a kid from Colombia to help them deliver this demo in Saudi Arabia to the biggest accounts in Saudi Arabia, in one of the most dynamic emerging markets right now? And of course, you start seeing the value that you've created, and it's like a snowball. You start with small value added stuff that you do, and it starts to become this big snowball. I got the chance to say to my boss, hey, I want to go to Saudi Arabia. I think that the team needs me. Of course, it's a business case. My boss told me, you're crazy, but let's see what I can do. And in the end, I was able to do the business case to show the value that I was going to add working with the team in Saudi Arabia at that time. And I remember this as one of my most successful stories, not only because I love traveling. I one of my life goals was to visit 30 countries before I turned 30, and I did it. Saudi Arabia was one of them because of this project. And really living, as you said, the partnerships that are built with the different teams across the globe, seeing that what I've created, what I've designed myself with the help of many people was being showcased to these customers at that event very far away from home was probably one of the most eye-opening experiences to what you can build into a career that you love and a career that's going to help you grow as a person. So I wouldn't say that this was a moment that made me understand that I had to shift roles from a role perspective, but it definitely was a accelerating moment of saying, if I work on the things I like, leveraging the skills that I have and feeling alive into what I do, it's going to give me a very rewarding career moving forward, visiting places that I thought I would never visit and meeting people, which is the most important part, which are friends today and which I call often to just say hello and just have a quick chat. So I would say that was a moment that really encouraged me to put forward and accelerated my career as well.
Well, and I think that acceleration comes from raising your hand, expressing interest, being passionate about something, willing to take on something that's hard. And, you didn't initially sign up for this saying, I'm going to get to go to Saudi Arabia and present in this really amazing way, but it became an outcome of just willing to say yes to something new.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, as you look at your growth journey here and, some of these different times that you've had change happen, uh, what are some of the lessons that you now take with you as you look forward? Like I said, for me, one of the lessons I had was just that importance of network. It's not just hard work, but it's also really a network being a part of how you drive success. I learned how to have a voice and how to share what I had to say, that I didn't have to wait till I was a certain level or title to be able to speak to that. Are there some maybe specific lessons that you've started to learn that continue to evolve who you are at work?
I would say your question was about change, right? And one of the things that we're most uncomfortable with is change. But change is everywhere, every time. More in these big companies where change is constant, right? I would say that's one of the lessons I've learned. And I will always dig back to self-awareness, right? To know who you are, to know your voice, to do what you enjoy. And this may seem trivial, but I'm going to give you a quick example. My wife, she is excellent doing analytical work. She loves, after 8 hours of deep work, of solving a problem with Excel, with macros, with these very technical analytical stuff. And she has a very big reward from trying to solve these problems. Me, I personally, and I joke with her about this, I can only color the cells of Excel sometimes. And I'm going to put that out there to just say that I'm not really good at Excel. I get my feedback, my positive feedback from seeing how when I am in a stage, whether I'm talking to one person or whether I'm talking to 10 people, or I'm talking to 200 people in an auditorium, I want to see how they react to the different things that I do. Very similar to what a rock guitarists do. So one of the lessons that, again, I'd say that it's important is to have your self-awareness, understand what you stand for, and live up to that. Live up to that reality, because I'm gonna show you that if you again do the basic things right, and you know how you're adding value to someone, you're gonna have a very successful career. And that was a very, I would say, big lesson that I learned throughout my career.
Okay, so many of the people who are likely listeners are leaders themselves. So can you talk about your experience with the leaders who helped guiding your career early stages, some of the ways that they helped put you on that right path, shared feedback, and really shaped your experience?
Absolutely. And you were one of them, of course. And you actually helped me again with what you said, making questions, asking for feedback. And every time I come to this question, and I'm gonna tell you about a thought experiment that I did in the office. And that was, I of course have the cohort of friends, younger friends that I started my career with. I worked with them. I went to party with them. I did things outside office with them. But I also started being friends with the senior account executives, senior, again, CSMs, senior solution engineers, that of course there was that generational gap, I would put it that way, between those two groups. And once I heard from the younger generation saying, hey, the more senior stuff, they don't like to interact with us. They are very, I would say, evasive. They don't like talking to us. We could also, they said they're boring, whatever. And I was like, how's that? I work with them. They joke the same that we do. They pull up jokes on each other. They're very nice people. How can you say that? And when I went to the more senior colleagues, I asked them the same. What do you think of the younger generations? And they told me the same thing. Their answer was exactly the same thing. The younger stuff, they don't want to interact with us. They are always doing the job. And one of the things that this showed me, to your point, Katie, is that when you want to interrupt, and this is not only in work, but in life, when you really wanna get to know or get to talk with other person that's different than you, that has a generational gap, that is from another country, for example, coming to the Saudi Arabia topic again. I think it's very important to communicate clearly and transparently with them. I'd say that, of course, not all the leaders are good at this, not all the young talent are good at this, but I've seen that leaders that have made the most impact in my career have been the ones that have given me the opportunity, that have let me raise my hand and pull me into those hard projects that they knew that they were hard and they were going to push me up my limits, but they wanted to give me the opportunity to do that. How are you going to respond to that? Again, doing the basic things right, making sure that, again, you do those basic things right, and make sure that the opportunity that was given to you by those leaders is delivered. And again, you are putting your 100% to make sure to get that. So I would just say, on this note, empathy, listening, and really try to get people, whether they're different from you or not. I would say that.
As a leader who had you on the early talent spectrum, and then I had people who were more tenured than I were, had been at our company for over 30 years. One of the things I always tried to do was to understand your motivation, understand your skills, understand where you thrive, and then look for where are the right opportunities to put you on a spot, maybe where you're comfortable so you can really thrive and enjoy and be happy. Where were there times where I can put you in something that's going to be a bit of a stretch, but it's going to help you grow, pull you out of your comfort zone to take on something new, and just trying to be conscious about where those different places were. I also always was trying to look at where should there be different connections,
Yep.
so, like,
Hmm.
you had a new hire buddy, you had someone in region, you had someone more tenure, we had, like, a group of, like, the rookies, people who are newer kind of getting together to
Yeah.
connect on their experience to try to bring multiple points of views together around how you crafted your experience and your identity of who you are at work.
And I'm telling you, to your point, I think that the first reaction of all of us when we are put to work with someone that's not of our same age, when someone that's not from our same country, is how am I gonna pull this out, right? How am I gonna work with this person that's different from me, adapt my work style to his, or him adapting his work style, or his or hers work style to me. But in the end, you end up learning tons from that experience, whether it's a positive experience or it's a negative experience. You learn from both, and as you're saying, many times the best results could come from putting people together that are not similar and could bring different points of view to the table.
Have you felt like some of the leaders had kind of a preconceived expectation of early talent, good or bad, of he's going to be a rock star or he doesn't know what he's doing? What was kind of your experience of walking in to form a relationship with the new leader?
So, to your point, and one of the things that I really don't like on my personal life is or are generalizations. Let's just put it this way: all millennials are job hoppers, right? And you hear this a lot. All senior leaders are close-minded, right? And again, I started seeing and working, with my closer family, with my closer friends, and saying, "Hey, why are you saying that every one of this group is like something?" Most of the time, those generalizations are not true, right? Not all millennials are job hoppers, and not all senior leaders are close-minded, right? So one of the things that I started to do was challenge a couple of leaders that I heard this, of course, in a very respectful way, and saying, and I've come across this myself when they tell me, "Hey, Santi, you are different from your generation. You are the only one that is reliable. You are the only one that is not a job hopper." And I tell them respectfully, this is not true, because of course, there are people that are job hoppers in my generation and in every generation, right? There are many people that are also they do not perform to the best level. That's something that's a reality, and we can't change it. But I'm telling them, I've seen a lot of people my age that are hardworking, are doing the right things right, are doing the basic things right, that are achieving incredible results. And I think that again, it's about not generalizing to a couple of groups of people. I think that's not a good way to go. And to your point, one of the things that I think that we should we're trying to change is just make sure that we don't get those generalizations or preconceived thoughts about people to keep growing, but just rather, to understand that it's a case to case thing. And another thing that I wanted to share with you on that end is I believe that if that young person is there, is because he earned it in some way, right? He went through a recruiting process. He went through a selection process where senior leaders probably had the chance to interview him, or someone interviewed him, whether that was HR, whether that was the hiring manager. And I would say that give that person the opportunity. At least give that person the opportunity. If he doesn't perform well, we always have a percentage of people that don't perform. But don't try to not give the opportunities to the people that are just coming in because they're early talents. Because in the end, everyone is there because they earned it in any way, right? If there is something that you're putting a lot of people that are not performing, probably there's something wrong with your recruitment process, to be honest with you. But that person was there because he earned it or he or she earned it in a way. So I think that giving those opportunities past his preconceived thoughts is very important for early talents to develop and to show what they could do actually.
So, Santi, leaders, who would like to get better at really connecting with early talent, what type of advice might you suggest? What are things maybe that leaders have done that helped, foster trust or drive motivation or, help stretch you as you've pursued growth? What kind of things would you be suggesting to them about how they could be a better leader?
So, and that's a great question, Katie. That's a great question because I think that, again, I'm sharing my perspective, but many times, I think that we have a preconceived notion that, of course, we need to help early talents, but also we also need to help leaders who are becoming people managers to help manage in general teams, but I would say early talents as well. One of the things I've seen working very well is what you said, right? Understanding motivations, what is behind that. Sometimes the business works very fast, that we don't have the time to do these small talks, right? But at least understanding, where that person wants to go or things that he or she wants to go, and working with that, right? Having a real empathetic conversation about where that person wants to go and how does he or she feels about doing the work that they're doing right now. Because remember, I always say early talents normally don't know where they want to go, and they raise their hand sometimes for things that actually they are not a fit for. So I think that it's important that we understand that we again give the opportunity when the opportunity arises, for sure, in controlled environments. One thing that has been really important for my role has been shadowing. For example, when you pair someone that's more experienced, that is not necessarily the person's manager, but where that person can actually see someone that is doing the job in action, learning the concepts and learning these chip and sticks and tricks that these more tenured people have, is something that I've seen working very well in those environments. So I would put it in a two-way fold. The first one is, as I said to you before, communication, clear and transparent communication. And the second thing for sure is learning by doing, and be able to shadow someone and see how those people are doing the job on site.
As we go to wrap here, what are some of the ways that you're learning today, and what's some final advice that you would want to share to, either other, people early talent in their career, or leaders who are, looking to really foster great talent as they're building that pipeline of growth across their team?
Well, as you said, Kirian, this has been, a great conversation. I've enjoyed it a lot, and we're sharing a lot of experiences that we had. What am I learning right now? I think that, as I said, not coming to the cliche lifelong learner, but I do think that we should learn every day. And one of the things that I'm putting myself to test is, I've said it, hard skills have a very linear way to learn. You learn math one, then you learn math two, then you learn math three, and you start getting better at these hard skills, right? But the soft skills are much more trickier. How can you learn creativity? How can you get better at communication? How can you get better at problem solving? And these are the skills that are going to set us aside from artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is getting really good at hard skills. But the soft skills, how we communicate to people, this people to people interaction, how are we doing objection handling? You mentioned it. It's something that keeps us human, and it's something that you actually don't have a curriculum to learn. You have to go out there, put yourself in situations such as this one to get better at communication, to get better at objection handling, going out in demos and doing that. So I'm trying to get better every day at those skills, putting myself in uncomfortable situations to learn them, and trying to, get better at those. And as a final advice, just coming to the second part of your question, I would say just dream big, dream big. I would say that there's this concept that you shouldn't have expectations, right? That expectations are not good to have. But on the other hand, I think that expectations actually help you amplify your experience, right? When you close your eyes and when you visualize yourself in your dream job, in your dream car, with your dream guitars, it really gives you this feeling on your stomach, this fire in your stomach that's pushing you to move forward. So I think that one of the things that is wrong with expectations is that if you have high expectations, you need to put in high amounts or high level of very good work, right? And to always align those expectations that you have with the work that you're gonna put in to get and to achieve them. Don't tie your happiness to your outcomes, tie them to the process, and that's also very cliche, but it's very true. And be conscious that many things are outside of your control. But what you can control is that you can dream big, you can work, and you can get better at your skills to get to those dreams. And I would say that, don't put yourself down, always dream big and always go all in for it.
Tremendous, tremendous advice. Thank you so much, Shanti, for sharing about your experience. And I wish you all the best as you continue to grow and really just be a rock star in all that you do.
In work and also outside of work, I'm actually looking for a band right now. So wish me luck with that one. And it was a great honor to be here with you, Katie. And I hope to speak to you very soon.
Thanks a lot, Santi.
Have a great one.